Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tech Sharmit podcast. Today I'm joined by another very special guest, Alexander Arvidsson, who is joining us all the way from Sweden. If I talk about Alex, then he is a Chief Technical Officer, Microsoft Data Platform MVP, and a data architect with nearly three decades of experience helping organizations transform their approach to data analytics and a platform modernization. His journey spans from deep technical implementation to advising companies globally on cloud data platforms, unified analytics, and building architectures that deliver real business impact. So, today in this episode, we are going to talk about Alex's professional journey, his insight. We will see his insights on the data. But before we proceed with all of these things, I would like to thank Alex for joining us today in this episode. And now I request you to please initiate the discussion by telling us a bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always interesting to hear someone describe you in words that you were not really thinking about. Because, as you said, I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and for me, it kind of feels like it was yesterday that I started my professional journey, and it's so easy to forget all the stuff that came before you. So
Right.
I'm Alexander. I am from Sweden. We're currently, as I told you before we started, for the first time in 33 days, we have the sun out. I'm very happy to see the sun. I saw the sun, it left again, and it's probably going to be gone for the next couple of weeks as well. That's the winter time up here in the Nordics. So I started back in late 1997 as a developer, which everybody's in agreement that I should not be a developer. So I'm not anymore. And then I fell into infrastructure and databases and really found my niche. For some reason, I grasp data, and I've always been a trainer. So training and advising and all those things sort of kind of came fairly natural. I live in the city of Linköping, which is the same city where we build the Swedish Gripen fighter, which is
Mm-hmm.
kind of interesting because I'm also a private pilot. So I fly out from the same airfield as Saab, where they make the fighters. So some days you'd simply have to make way for a fighter that wants to go fly. So you just have to stay
Correct.
back for a bit. I have a wife. I have three absolutely batshit crazy cats, and way too much Star Wars stuff than probably is sane. But what can you say? So that's a bit about me.
Okay, your journey sounds really very fascinating. The way, like you described your journey and your personal life also, and we will dig more into that, like how you started your journey, particularly with data. Because when I did some research about your profile, so I found one very interesting thing that you often say that only data that matters can create the change. So my question is, like, when did you first realize that insight is more important than just having the data? Because people are busy in acquiring the data, but you often emphasize that is mm, uh, data can create change only if it matters, right? So when did you first realize that insight?
So that's a really good question, and I I think it came fairly surprisingly late. So probably in the last decade or so, I've spent before that 20 years putting my fingers in just about every pie there is: infrastructure, networking, storage, databases, the works.
Hmm.
And I was looking for something. And for me, tech was the one thing that I understood. I wasn't really good with people, but I understood computers, I understood technology, and that was what was really interesting. But I also realized that, hey, wait a minute, I can have the best database in the world. I can have the fastest network in the world. I can have the most storage in the world. It doesn't really matter because we're looking at it from the wrong perspective. We're
Hmm.
not
Right.
looking at a problem from a business perspective. And it's all about the business and how do you make something change in a business? Well, if it doesn't matter, well, it's not going to change anything. So I sort of kind of connected the dots and came to the conclusion that you need to make data matter before it can influence anything. And data in itself doesn't have a voice. I blow a gasket whenever someone says, just let the data tell the story. Data is not going to
Mm.
tell a story that I don't decide it's going to tell. So
Correct.
that's how I sort of kind of came to that insight.
Okay. So Alex, like you have spent nearly 3 plus decades working with data particularly, right? So what do you think, like what is the one belief about the data you held early in your career that you have completely changed, that has completely changed your mind in the later go? So what was that one thing that you considered in the early days, but now it is has completely changed about the data?
Oh, that's I have a straight answer for that one, and that is
Mhm.
technology. I
Technology.
used to be super technology focused, as I said,
Hmm.
and now these days technology is important. Make no mistake, but it's a tool, and it is
Correct.
only a tool. It is always going to be secondary to what do you need it for. I mean, you don't go to the hardware store to buy a hammer just to figure out what you can hit with it. You
Correct.
have a problem, a nail that you need to hammer in, so you go buy a hammer. But it's so easy to look at it from the other perspective. Oh, I have a new shiny hammer, and with enough force, I can use this on anything. But
Right.
that's one of the biggest mistakes I think that people do.
That's a great example because with this example, anyone can relate like how important is to identify the actual thing that you are going to do in order to get the better result. And as we talked about the individual issues or the individual challenges, I just want to know as from the perspective of chief technical officer, because as you are currently serving as a CTO, so what would you advise to all organization who are working uh, about the common mistakes that companies often do when they are modernizing their data platforms, because you have been working with multiple organization almost of all sizes, right? So from your perspective, what are the common mistakes that companies do or make when they are modernizing their data platforms?
I think that the single biggest mistake, the single most common mistake that I see is the hammer issue, i.e., you buy the tool, you decide on a tool
Hmm.
or a concept, and then you try to fit the business problem into that solution space. So I've seen people decide that, yeah, we're going to run Databricks. Cool. What do you need it for? I don't care. We're going to run Databricks because that's the
Hmm.
new cool thing. I'm sure we can do a lot of good things with Databricks. There's nothing wrong with Databricks as a tool. But if it's not the tool that fits the problem, well, you can throw a lot of money at it. It's not going to solve anything.
Agree.
So that's one aspect. And also getting attached to a concept. We want to run a medallion architecture. I hesitate to call it an architecture. It's more of a concept. It, yes, it's going to give you a direction, but it's also going to constrain you. And we're back to what problem are you solving for? Surprisingly, often the solution is way simpler than you want it to be because it's not cool. Excel, you can say a lot of things about Excel, but the world rests on Excel. And in a lot of cases, Excel is the solution. You
Hmm.
don't
Right.
need a big BI solution. So
Correct.
I'm simplifying, of course, but that's probably my biggest gripes.
Okay. And also, like when we are talking about the data, like people are always curious about the tools, like what tools they wanted to use and how they can use, right? So from your experience, like you because you often help team choose the right tool and the right method. So for the audience, can you share one of the example where you utilize where a simpler architecture delivered the better result than a complex one, right? So anything that comes in your mind that can help us to understand that right tools and how to choose the right tools and the right methods.
I think I need to turn that whole question on its head because
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have a hard time finding an example of where something very complicated delivered better results.
Okay.
Because it all comes down to a bunch of principles, really. Uh, the simpler something is, the
Mm-hmm.
fewer things can go wrong, the easier it is, it's going to be to understand and to train people that are going to take care of it, the easier it's going to be to fix. And most importantly, considering everything is moving so fast, the easier it is going to be to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
So I absolutely hate super complicated things,
Okay.
because if they're complicated, it means that someone has not taken the time to really understand the problem and take away the stuff that is needed. I'm a huge fan of Joni Ives from Apple. He used to work for Apple as a designer, and he said that it's not ready when you can't put more things in. It's ready when you can't take more things out.
Right.
And simplify the heck out of everything to make sure that it actually works. Because a lot of times I see really cool things on paper,
Mm.
but you cannot implement it in reality.
Yes.
Maybe it's too difficult to do from a computational perspective, but that's secondary. It's
Mm.
probably going to be more difficult than your people can handle. And then we're back to, okay, who's going to take care of this? I have it in good authority that consultants are kind of expensive. So,
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah, I also agree that sometimes we make the things complex for ourselves itself because we think too much about those things that yes, this is a specific thing we want to utilize to get the better result. But later on we find out that yes, there were some alternative solution. So if we had put better time, so we might have opted for the right thing. Okay, so moving ahead, Alex, we will talk about another your expertise that is unified analytics platform because nowadays there is a lot of hype around this term unified analytics platform. So, what do you think? Like, when does the fabric, if we particularly talk about fabric, when does the fabric make sense, and when might it actually be the wrong choice? So let's say if any particular organization is going to opt for the fabric, so what things they can keep in mind before selecting it or avoiding it, or maybe for looking some alternatives.
So this is pretty contentious because my opinion differs somewhat or a fair bit from the Microsoft marketing. Let's put it that
Okay.
way. So it's a really interesting platform. I like the idea of unifying things because then you have essentially everything at your fingertips. And the good thing with unification is that it talks to each other. The different components talk to each other. One of the
Mm-hmm.
really hard things to do with Databricks, or used to be difficult, is to integrate Databricks with the rest of Azure. From a security standpoint, from a storage standpoint, Databricks is its own thing. In
Yeah.
Fabric, everything is inside the same box, so everything talks to each other. At least
Mm-hmm.
that's the theory. And I think in a couple of years, when Fabric is more done than it is now, this conversation would be different. But I would argue that it is a great tool for small to medium organizations that have a fairly well defined problem space. The larger your organization is, the more difficult you are going to run into when it comes to enterprisey features, CI/CD development, testing, those things. I would argue that Fabric isn't there yet. It's getting there,
Okay.
absolutely, but there are a lot of limitations. So,
Yes.
uh, pretty much.
Okay. Here, I just want to ask one question because the way you are answering these questions, it sounds you are sounding very calm and composed, right? But working in the IT industry, dealing with multiple people, communities, and teams, right? It needs lots of patience, proper knowledge because you have to deal with lots of challenges as well, right? So, did you ever found any day in your life where you found that no, this is the thing that is not going the right direction? So like overall, like I just want to know like how you balance your work life, what things you prefer when you are dealing with the people, and how you make the things easier for yourself.
That's a really, really good question. And I, hmm, when I was younger, and this is still an issue, but I've kept it much more controlled these days.
Yeah.
I had the terrible way of blowing up. I got angry
Hmm.
really, really easily because I have a tendency to see a problem, see a solution, see what could be, and then pretty much forget to explain my thinking to others. That
Okay.
means that the others don't see it, sadly, and I get frustrated by the fact
Hmm.
that people don't understand what I understand. I've come to realize, thankfully, that that's a me problem. If you don't understand the solution, that's because I didn't explain it well enough,
In a well.
not because you're dumb. And that way of thinking made me uh, take a step back and not get so frustrated. At the end of the day, everything we're doing is about people. It's
Hmm. Right.
the tech is cool, tech is a tool, but it's about people. And if I can't get you to understand, if I can't get you to agree, well, we can move forward. So always about people. And the more I learn about interactions between people, the better I get at it. And also something pretty interesting for this conversation, considering that we are pretty far from each other geographically,
Yes.
but also socially. I got a book a couple of years back. It's a bright yellow book called the what is this called? It deals with, I'm gonna come up
Yeah.
with it. It deals with society and the differences in society, the culture map. That's the name.
Hmm.
And it talks about the relative difference between countries. I used to
Okay.
have a colleague from Portugal that always started every explanation by going down to the bits and bytes. It drove
Hmm.
me crazy because I prefer to have the big picture first, and then we drill down into details.
Okay.
We couldn't figure out why didn't we gel. Then we both
Hmm.
read the book and realized that, hey, in Portugal, you need to start from the absolute smallest detail and build your way up. Otherwise, people don't listen to you. In
Correct.
Sweden, you start with the overview and then you go down because otherwise people lose interest. And it turns out that it was a cultural difference. I
Correct.
would never have thought that. So it's so easy to judge people's behaviors and actions from your own frame of reference. So, long winded answer, people. The more I learn about people, the more frustrated I get, the more excited I get, the more I start to think that maybe I should start a farm somewhere far out in the forest and just leave all this tech and people behind. That might be easier.
That's a very great answer because I'm sure like those who are into the leadership role, they can also relate with this thing because this is something that every leader should know, right? Because you know the solution, you know the right tools, but if you don't know how to convey it with your team, then there would be a challenge, right? But the way like you explained everything, like when we are supposed to go in bits and bytes and when you are supposed to explain the overview, so both things are important like because you have to look from each angle, right? But the way
Mhm.
you just explain the thing, I think now they can relate like how to interact with the teams, what things they should keep in mind when they are interacting with people from the other origin. So this is how like
True.
actually a leader should work. So that's a great
And
answer.
this is very much the essence of making data matter.
Correct.
This is what I want business intelligence to be. Because if I can't make data matter to you, why would you care and why would you want to change anything to create another business outcome?
Right. Right. And I think that is the same philosophy which inspired you in the later journey to start your public contribution of knowledge sharing, right? Because from deep technical work to the global stages like podcasts and other advocacy activities, you have contributed in different roles. So, what exactly motivated you to step into the technical darkness and start sharing your knowledge publicly? Like, what all other roles you um, follow in order to share your knowledge?
So I thought about this, and the the answer is kind of a sad one because
Okay.
I started uh, working early in my career with Oracle. And Oracle is a great tool, but the community around Oracle is, in my perspective, very closed. If you asked someone for a script, you were handed an invoice pretty much.
Okay.
Nothing was free, nothing was available. Everybody hoarded their stuff. And then sort of kind of by mistake, I fell into the SQL Server community,
Mm-hmm.
which was exactly the same, just completely opposite. Because
Okay.
everybody and their cat wanted to share stuff. They wanted to give you head starts. They wanted to give you documentation, scripts. If you needed anything, just call. I was just blown away by that community. It was vibrant. It was inviting. I was not treated like a complete noob. I was more like, oh, you come from Oracle. Cool. Can you explain this? Because I think this is applicable to SQL Server. And I wanted to come play. I wanted to be a part of this. And I was told, not in a bad way, but I was told that the price of admission was
Hmm.
that I share too. And of course, just like everybody coming into a new community, you think about what can I bring to the table? What can I share? And that's the thing. Everybody has their story to share.
Yes.
Uh, it not all solutions and not all answers are out there. So that's how I started sharing. And then a colleague of mine, Simon, he came up with this absolutely bananas idea that, hey, let's start a podcast. And I just
Hmm.
looked at him and said, you're dumb. Why on earth would anybody listen to us? I give this 2 weeks. I think we're going to be done in 2 weeks. And we weren't, because 8 years and 312 episodes before we shut it down. The thing is, it's not really shut down. We're just taking a pause. It's it's just spiraled out of control from there. And also going up on stage, I've been a trainer for almost 30 years. I look at speaking as training. There's a lot of speakers who look at speaking as entertainment. That's fine. I look at it as training, and I create my sessions with that mindset. I want
Hmm.
to give something tangible to my audience, something for them to take with them home, for instance. So that's how I fell into speaking as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think both roles are like they are something, these roles are something that will help you to grow individually as well as professionally, because when you are interacting with the podcast, you know about the person or the like-minded person with whom you are talking and doing the podcast like we are doing. And also as a speaker, like if you are not just doing it for the sake of doing, then you know what you need, what you want to deliver, and how you are going to deliver it. So behind this process, like you learn a lot thing, right? So this is the
Mhm.
best thing, and I'm sure like people like you are also involved too much into nowadays into these podcasts and the technical sessions and workshops, because they know the actual worth behind it, right? They know how much it will help them to interact with the community and to build the community actually. Because if you are
Mhm.
interacting with different people from different countries, you are actually creating the community that will share knowledge within the community itself. So that's a great way to start.
I think that is really, really important, what you just said. Community doesn't just spontaneously appear.
Yes.
Community is built.
Built.
Community
Yes.
is built by people like you, by people like me. We share, we talk to people, we ask questions.
Yes.
That's community. It's not something that you look at from the outside and want to be in. No, if you want to be part of it, you are part of it, and everybody
Correct.
can give their part.
That's a great thing. Yes. Okay. So now here I want to ask you one question, Alex, which is related to modern data platform. So let's say if you were building a modern data platform from scratch itself, from today itself. So what principles would you guide? Would what principle would guide every architectural decision from your end? Like how you will decide and how you will build the platform.
I would make sure that every decision looks at how it creates or aligns with a business value or
Mm-hmm.
a business problem. I would want it to be as simple as can possibly be, because you need to be able to explain the problem you're trying to solve in a way that people understand. We've already been through that.
Yes.
I think it needs to be modular because this is due to the fact that everything is moving so fast. When I
Mm-hmm.
started working again back in the 90s, we had a major release for maybe 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what happens in Microsoft Fabric in a month. It's just crazy that in a couple of months, something absolutely fundamental can change. One
Correct.
leg security, for instance. That pretty much means that you need to rip out your entire security architecture and just throw it over your shoulder. That's why things need to be modular.
Mm.
Also, governed and documented.
Correct.
Hey, people say that's not technical architecture. I say that's crap. No, it's extremely much technical architecture. You need to make sure that it's governed properly because that in turn is going to make sure that you can deal with things that you didn't think about.
Mm. Right.
Security is good, but only for the stuff that you can conceive of.
Correct.
Governance is what keeps you when you sort of kind of forget something. And of course, documenting everything. I have the memory of I don't know, a brick. When I come back from vacation, I'm hard pressed to remember what the heck I did the day before. So having documentation not only for everybody else, but for me, I need to understand what was I thinking, and we can have a long discussion on documentation,
Yes.
what it means and how you should do it, but that's that we don't want to bore people to death. But I think it is extremely important to have these things. So business value, it needs to be simple, it needs to be modular, it needs to be governed, it needs to be documented.
Documented. Yes. All right. Okay, so moving ahead, we will talk about that part of your journey that you believe that is unseen or underestimated moment, but had the biggest impact on who you are today. So when you're looking back on your journey, like what do you think? Like what is that one part of your journey that you never shared with anyone, but it had really impacted your entire life?
So I think the most um, pivotal change in my career was actually going to Pass Summit in Seattle. I think this must have been 2013 or something. So it's not a long time ago. And I'll give you some background. Whenever I went to a conference, I went there with a very big schedule. I knew exactly what sessions I wanted to go to, and in some cases, I wanted to be in two places at the same time because I wanted to learn as much as I could. So I was just running around like crazy, taking notes, really doing the tech stuff. And as soon as the conference was done, I went back to my hotel and pretty much crashed. And you can repeat this for a couple of days. I never talked to people. That was not my thing. I was pretty much moving by the wall, and I was a kind of a wallflower. Back in 20, I think it was 2013 or 2014, I came up the escalators in the convention center, and I ran straight into one of the shortest people in the data community, Katrina Wilhelmsen, a fantastic Norwegian woman. And she's a good friend of mine, and she said, "Well, hi, welcome. Have you met Adam?" And I
Uh,
said, "Adam who?" Adam Saxton, which is one of the guys in the Cube, if you know those people. They have hundreds of thousands of followers on YouTube these days. They weren't
okay.
that big back then, but they were definitely up and coming. And I said, of course I know Adam. I don't know him, but I know of him. So she grabbed me and pulled me over and introduced me to Adam Saxton. And it could have been anybody. It doesn't matter who it was. It matters that she thought that I should be a part of the community, as in talk to people.
Right.
And that was the first time that I instead of going to every session there was, I started interacting with people. I started to talk to them. I joined what was now called the hallway track, i.e., just hanging out in the hallways, talking to other people in the community. And I think that I learned 10 times as much as I would have learned by just going to the sessions. I also got 1,000 new contacts, people that I could reach out to, people I could talk to. And
Hmm.
I think this was the pivotal moment when I realized that I I can only do so much on my own. But
Correct.
now with the community available to me and people know me and I can ask questions, well, these days I tell people, you don't hire me because I know everything. You hire me because I know everyone. And after
Correct.
so many years in the community, that's pretty much true. I know of so many people who can solve a problem that I can't. So
Correct.
that means that I can get stuff done so much faster, not because I'm so smart. It's because there's so many smart people around me that
Yes.
can help me. So that was my pivotal moment, I think.
That's a great thing. And I think this is something that anyone can try to implement in their life also, because when you interact with like-minded people, as you mentioned, there are lots of other things that you will learn, and you will build a good community, and you will find the better things in your life as well. So that's a great
Mhm.
change. Okay, so Alex, now although like there are plenty of things that we can discuss here, especially about the data with expert like yourself, but we are on short on time, so I just want to take one last question, and this is related to Sweden itself. So, as a proud citizen of Sweden, if you had the chance to highlight one overlooked aspect of Sweden that the world doesn't fully appreciate it yet, so what would it be from your perspective?
Uh, I think the one thing that I would highlight is the fact that there is so much more. There's so much more to Sweden than the big cities. People think of Stockholm, maybe
Mm,
Gothenburg and Malmö, and that's Sweden. That's just a teeny tiny part. And
mm,
also, people think that the north of Sweden is slightly north of Stockholm. Yeah, you're about 35% of Sweden. Everything else is really, really far up. Sweden, I looked this up. Sweden is, or India is about 7.3 times larger
mhm,
than Sweden. So India is a huge country, but Sweden is the largest country in the Nordics
mm,
and huge space and only a 10 million population where most of them live in cities. There's so much space. There's so much nature that people don't necessarily realize.
mm,
And since we're so tall from the northern tip to the southern part, you can experience all kinds of weather and phenomena. Down south, it's usually fairly wet and warmer. All the way
okay.
up in the north, you're close to the Arctic Circle. So yeah, there's so much more to Sweden than you
That can
probably won't
explore.
find in a guidebook.
Great thing. Okay, so now I'll just take my last question, and this is something related to the support system, because what I believe, like, no one succeed alone. Who's so in your journey, like, who stood out as the guiding voices that really influence your journey, and that really influence the way you think and lead now in your current role. So who were those support system for you?
Oh wow, that so many people have had impact on me in my career, but I think that there are a couple of names that really stand out for different reasons. Katarina Wilhelmsen, for simply grabbing this wayward Swede and introducing him to the larger community. I will forever be grateful because that was pivotal.
Yes.
I used to have a boss, Stefan Jung, who uh, really drove home that you can't lead by numbers. It doesn't matter if the budget says that you're deep in the red. If you believe in what you're doing, well, you should probably keep doing it. He really took the time to uh, discuss and explain people things with me. So that was really really useful. And Simon, Simon Binder, the one of the other two hosts of the podcast. I
Okay.
had the pleasure of working with him for quite a while. He's 12 years my junior. It, so many times that I wanted to wring his neck because we have different views on things. But that's the thing. He has taught me so much about where my view might not be correct and definitely not the one view. So those, and I'll throw in Heini Ilmarinen as well, the third host of Native in Tech. She's taught me a lot about, again, people and the interactions between people and technology. So wonderful people that I owe so much.
All right. Okay, so yeah, thank you so much, Alex, for joining us in this episode and for sharing so much great initiatives. And the example you just shared, I'm sure like this will resonate with so many other listener. And the way you have explained everything, especially those things that you personally implemented in your journey to get the better things. So that is really very worthy discussion, and I'm very thankful for you to join this show. So thank you once again for being a part of the show.
Thank you very much for having me. This was a really interesting conversation.
Thank you.